Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this simultaneous meeting of Babergh District Council Cabinet and Mid-Suffolk District Council Cabinet. I am Councillor John Ward, leader of Babergh District Council, and also in attendance is Councillor Gerard Brewster, Deputy Leader of Mid-Suffolk District Council. We will be jointly chairing the meeting today. However, for reasons of efficiency, I will be leading the items. May I remind you of some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that you maintain social distancing from all other persons whilst in the chamber and in the communal areas. Please ensure that you wear a face covering at all times unless you're sitting down or if you are exempt from doing so, and that you use the hand sanitizer and wipes provided. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use. Please do not interrupt other speakers or hold separate conversations whilst others are speaking. If you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent or switched off. And finally, we will be using e-voting for this meeting on the modern.gov app, so please can members make sure they are logged in and ready to use the app. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the Council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. I'll now move to the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair. We have received apologies from Councillor Morley, Councillor Flatman and Councillor Fleming.
Thank you. Item 2, to receive declarations of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interest by members. Are there any to declare? Councillor Brewster.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, non-pecuniary interest on the Gateway 14 item as Chair of the holding company.
Thank you.
We've got some others.
Sorry. Councillor Gould.
Thank you very much. Also, non-pecuniary interest with Gateway 14 item as a director of the holding company.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead.
Same for myself. I'm a director of Gateway 14.
Thank you. Right. If there are no others, then item 3, which is paper BCA 2122, to confirm the minutes of the Babergh Cabinet meeting held on the 6th of September 2021. These start on page 5 of your agenda pack. I won't go through each page individually, but are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes from any of the Babergh members? Nope. Okay, then may I have a proposer, please? Councillor Arthey, seconder. Councillor Osborne. Thank you. I'll now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now in progress on your app. Councillor McCraw, may I take your vote, please? And Councillor Davis, please, may I take your vote? Thank you. Councillor Busby? Thank you, Chair. That's unanimous.
Thank you. I'll now hand over to Councillor Brewster.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we now have MCA, I believe 21, I believe 20, to confirm the minutes of the Mid-Suffolk Cabinet meeting held on the 6th of September 2021, which you can find on the first page of item 5, on page 5. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? No. And could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Haddingham, and a seconder, please. Councillor Gould. The Governance Officer will now conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the vote are now in progress on your app. Councillor Byrne? Thank you. Chair, that is 6 votes for. That's unanimous.
Thank you. Right, moving on then. Item 4, to receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received.
Thank you. Item 5, questions by councillors.
None received.
Thank you. And item 6, matters referred by the Overview and Scrutiny or Joint Audit and Standards Committees.
Chair, we have received no such matter referred.
Thank you. Item 7, members, forthcoming decisions list. Does anyone have any comments on the forthcoming decisions list as it's currently printed? No. Okay, great. And we'll move on to item 8, which is paper BCA 2123 and MCA 2121, which is the Civil Parking Enforcement, that's the Off-Street Parking Enforcement Annual Report for 2020 to 2021. And firstly, I'll invite the Babergh Cabinet Member for the Environment to introduce the report. Councillor Malvisi.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm very pleased to be able to bring to Cabinet the first annual report of the Civil Parking Enforcement Off-Street. CPE had no sooner started in our districts than COVID hit us. For those who don't remember, CPE started on the 6th of April 2020, and this report provides you with information regarding the performance of CPE this past fiscal year. Although the report is primarily for noting, it is also recommended that you agree to such a report being produced annually going forward. By taking this decision then, BDC through the Cabinet is providing a vehicle for members and the public to be kept informed of the performance of CPE. The purpose of CPE is to ensure that traffic regulation orders in Babergh District Council car parks are adhered to. Babergh District Council entered into a partnership with West Suffolk and Ipswich in order to deliver the service. And during most of 2020, we decided that we would cease parking charges in BDC car parks, yet the enforcement teams continued to provide a service. I draw your attention to the finance section of Appendix A, where you will see that the penalty charges only amounted to 43% of the overall cost, but one has to remember that we were not charging for the first quarter of 2020-2021. We'll see what this year brings without the start-up costs. In Appendix A, you will see a breakdown of the performance for all our car parks, which I find interesting reading. I very much hope that you will agree with me that this informative report should be produced annually. Any surplus income generated after all costs are paid will be used to help support the cost of running this parking service. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll now invite the Mid-Suffolk Cabinet Member to introduce the Mid-Suffolk report.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be able to bring to Cabinet on behalf of Councillor Fleming the first annual report of civil parking enforcement off-street. CPE came into force on the 6th of April 2020. As you will know, that this was during a COVID lockdown, and so enforcement started later in June. This report provides you with information regarding the performance of CPE this past fiscal year. The purpose of CPE for Mid-Suffolk is to ensure that car park traffic regulation orders are adhered to. We plan to make this an annual report so that we can share with the public information and statistics about the enforcement function and keep people informed. Mid-Suffolk District Council entered into a partnership with West Suffolk and Ipswich in order to deliver this service. Within the report, you can see a breakdown of the costs for CPE, as well as the income received through penalty charge notices given. In future years, any surplus income generated after all costs are paid will be used to help support the cost of running this parking service. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanningham. May I have a seconder from Mid-Suffolk? And then I'll ask for a seconder from Babergh, which I forgot to do a few minutes ago. Thank you. Councillor Richardson. And seconder from Babergh, Councillor Osborne. Thank you. So, firstly, do we have any questions from Babergh members? Councillor Holt.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Mill Lane car parks on that list, and it's on the understanding that Mill Lane will become a permit holder car park in the future. Will that be within the next 12 months? And if so, we can then use the 116 visits in other locations to make it more cost effective? That's one question. Will we be looking at to increase or decrease certain visits to car parks depending on what sort of penalties we're finding in those car parks? The cost to the district is still reasonably high at £45,000. So as this has started in a COVID year, do we expect that to fall? And last but not least, the Market Hill in Sudbury, which is a county-owned car park, who actually controls the parking on there? 4 questions, sorry.
4 questions. Cass, would you like to pick up on those to start with, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Holt, for the question. So in terms of Mill Lane and the residents' parking proposal there, officers are working at the moment to get ready to make some changes to the traffic regulation order, which includes the statutory consultation with residents around the area. So we're just putting that plan into place at the moment, and shortly we'll be going out to consultation with residents to see if they support that car park moving to residents' parking permits only. I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to repeat a couple of those because they were quite quick, but the latter one I know was about who owns that or runs that car park. It's Suffolk County Council, and they have a service level agreement with Ipswich to enforce. So it's a Suffolk County Council run on-street car park.
So the different officers that enforce the parking on the Market Hill compared to our own officers that come from West Suffolk?
So they will probably share staff, I would say, so they're not sending 2 different lots of officers out. So we pay for a percentage of people, FTEs, full-time equivalents, I guess, that go out and enforce, and then Suffolk County Council use the same team, but obviously add some additional officers to it to do the on-street enforcement. So we don't have people going to do off-street and leaving and coming back to do on-street enforcement.
Just want to make sure we weren't paying for their parking.
We're certainly not paying for it, that's for sure.
The other question was, the cost is still reasonably high to the district. Do we think the current or the past year, the figures were affected by COVID? I'm not saying we want to fine people, but it was a cost that I think a lot of us didn't think we would be looking at in this financial year. So do we anticipate that coming down? And the other point was, will we be looking at targeting different car parks after gathering a year's data to perhaps reduce visits or increase visits in other car parks?
Lovely, thank you. So we had around a quarter of the first financial year that wasn't enforced to the normal standards. We also stopped charging in those periods as well, so there was not very much to enforce even if we'd carried on. So there was a definite deficit there that we would probably see an increase for in the first quarter of the next financial year. What I'd also say is there continue to be further social distancing measures and lockdown measures during the year. So again, as people start going back to work, as people start going back to shop and eat out, then we're going to see an increase in parking usage and therefore, unfortunately, an increase in bad parking behaviour. So you are likely to get an increased amount of fixed penalty notices or penalty charge notices. Then using this data, what we have been able to see is where there are less penalty charges notices given, and what we can do is use that information to send civil enforcement officers to car parks where there's a greater need for enforcement. So absolutely we can do that on an annual basis and move that resource around as we need it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cass. Any other questions from Babergh? Councillor Busby.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Has the any information on on-street parking? When will we get that?
Thank you, Councillor Busby. So Suffolk County Council obviously look after on-street. At the moment, they don't publish an annual report. I have spoken to them to find out if we could get some information from them, however. It won't be in the same format, but I can certainly share with you the same kind of information in terms of penalty charge notices given and the areas that they're given in. All of that information will be available through freedom of information request from a member of the public. So I can certainly ask Suffolk if they could share that with us.
Thanks. It'll be useful to have that once a year as well, just the number of visits they make and the number of penalty charge notices they issue out. Thanks.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that, particularly with some of the on-street parking where it directly affects Babergh and Babergh residents, particularly, for instance, down at the Stratford-Denham boundary at the store, where the new yellow lines and restrictions have been put in place. I have a quick question myself, and that is on the Hadley Railway Walk car park. Do we not patrol that?
So there's no traffic regulation orders on the Hadley car park, and so there's nothing that a civil enforcement officer could enforce there. We do, however, have public realm officers that go there to check and inspect the area, but there's no enforcement possible there.
Thank you. Any more questions from Babergh? If not, Mid Suffolk, do you have any questions? Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you. Well, clearly, this is the first year's data, which is sort of affected by COVID, but I'm just looking at the car parking in I guess it takes the guys a sort of hours round trip to get up there. And we see Buckhorn Lane car park, 3 patrol visits, a total of 0 hours and 1 minute. So they're spending 20 seconds in the car park. And I understand it's 24-hour maximum stay free car parking, so I just wonder what the efficacy of that is.
So we were keen for any car park with the traffic regulation order to have visits there. Clearly, when the traffic regulation orders don't have much for the civil enforcement officers to be able to enforce, we're going to look at, as I said with Babergh actually, to change those resources around. We can look to increase or decrease resources on an annual basis, or we could look to push that resource into other car parks where there's a higher number of enforcement needed.
In which case, other members, Councillor Field and then Councillor Wellham.
Thank you. Just a couple of points. Firstly, to support the thought that we do need an on-street car parking report. I mean, many of the areas like Needham Market has substantial on-street parking, as does places like Claydon, so it's certainly of great interest to people. The question really, the expenditure of £85,000 essentially, and that yielded £19,000 of penalty charge, which are obviously low due to COVID. But I just wondered, you did quote that the previous year we received something like £8,000 of penalty charges. I wondered what the expenditure to gain those was. In other words, really, what's happened to our cost of policing car parks?
Thank you, Councillor Field. So I wanted to put a comparison in the change that CPE brought for us. So there was a recognition from Mid Suffolk that the amount of enforcement that happened previously in car parks was very little. It was quite low. There was around 1 FTE that went out to enforce car parks. So with the introduction of CPE, Mid Suffolk have taken the opportunity to increase the amount of patrols that go on. So the breakdown of this expenditure includes a number of FTEs, some cars, phones, uniform, radios, that kind of thing. So it's a combination of all of that. So it is an increased amount of expenditure. I can get the exact previous expenditure figure for you if you'd like. But this was recognised that we wanted a better standard of enforcement as well with the new CPE regulations.
Thank you, Cass. Councillor Wellham.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got 3 questions. The first is a rhetorical question. It's, would it be possible for errors in the attached document to be put right before it becomes more public? For instance, the footer is Civil Parking Enforcement Off-Street Annual Report 2021-2021. I guess it's 2020 to 21, but I mean, it's a document that the public might be looking at. So I think it would be good. There are a few others. There's a few apostrophes and commas sprayed around the place. So if they could be looked at, I would be grateful.
Sorry, I didn't spot that one myself. It's, I just noticed it now, though.
Well, it has picked out who's read the document, hasn't it? Anyway, as Councillor Whitehead said, some visits are very short, and I picked up the ones that were less than a minute. Where is travel time taken into account? I mean, the travel time to get to to spend 20 seconds there is significant. Could that be? I mean, I'm not asking could it be looked at? Is there any point? Should we know how much of the time that these people are working is in travel time? Because my guess is it's quite significant, quite a lot of travel time. But the real question is around the Asda car park. It was without payment machines for a while. So will visits there need to be more frequent in the coming sort of 12 months or so? Are the machines now working? Have we got a permanent fix to them, or are they temporarily fixed and need replacing?
Thank you, Councillor Wellham. I will pass over to Cass, but the comment about the machines not working, and we've got a similar problem in Babergh with a number of our machines no longer in action, and I think that's purely because of the age and the cost of repairing. We're waiting for new ones, aren't we? Yeah.
Thank you. So on the question, first of all, that doesn't include travel time, and we can get travel time, so all the vehicles have trackers on them, so we are able to do that. What I would say, however, is we kind of share that travel time with Suffolk, because obviously they're enforcing the on-street traffic regulation orders as well, so they're not just going up to see the car parks, they're going to do all of the enforcement. However, that doesn't detract from the fact that there is a decent amount of travel time, absolutely, so I'm happy to get some figures for you on that. And yes, in terms of the Stowmarket machines over at Meadow Centre car park, we've had a few issues with their end of life. We unfortunately had some issues with when the refurb was going on, that a power line was cut. That happened just after a bad spell. But we are going through procurement at the moment to get new machines for that car park. So we hope within the next couple of months that they'll be in, and then we can get them installed.
Chair, if I may, does that mean that the number of visits and the length of visits to what I call the Asda car park will be different from in the last 12 months?
So there'll be different to points in the last 12 months. So obviously there's been quite a lot of time where the machines have been working, and then there is a decent amount of enforcement going on at that point. When there's less to enforce, so parking within a bay, for instance, is one thing that can be enforced. If someone's parked badly across a couple of bays, that could get a ticket. So yes, there will be times where there's been less enforcement. It will return to the normal level of enforcement.
Thanks, Cass. Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Chair. I just trying to get to the bottom of this, why we're actually doing this. Is the purpose to change parking behaviour? Or is it to try and nail all the transgressors that we can? What is the teams that go out, what are they trying to do, actually? Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
That's a great question that I'm very happy to answer, because actually they're about changing behaviour. So the point of enforcement is to show someone with a bit more of a stick that they're doing something wrong, and to encourage them to change their behaviour. So actually, the end result, what you'd like, is no enforcement officers necessary, because everybody's behaving properly. Unfortunately, that's simply not the case, but what you will get to, hopefully after a period of enforcement, is less people doing it. So you will see the costs staying static and the income reducing.
And can I just follow that? But of course, the thing, Cass, with car parking is that it's not necessarily the same people coming back time and time. We have a lot of tourists, a lot of visitors who perhaps misunderstand the rules that we've got. So that is a very difficult thing to achieve. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Busby. Well, we're about to go into debate, but is this a question before debate, or you're waiting? Sorry? Okay. Well, before we move into debate, Councillor Osborne, did you have another question, or was that again for debate? Okay. Right. If there are no more questions, then we will now move into debate. Firstly, Babergh members, and so it'll be Councillor Osborne and then Councillor Busby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, listening to the conversation that we've been having through the question time, it's apparent that there is a desire for there to be a on-street report as well. And I completely concur with that. So as the seconder of the recommendation, I would like to make a third recommendation, that a civil parking enforcement on-street report be produced annually.
Cass, is that possible to add that as a third recommendation?
I'm not entirely sure. So I'm not the owner of the information. So what I can do is request the information and share it without a doubt. I'm not entirely sure I can write a report on behalf of Suffolk County Council to publish that information. What I could do is bring it as part of the annual report within the text of the body of the report when we present each annual CP report off-street.
Could the wording be then that we request an annual report rather than a report be produced?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Councillor Busby.
Yeah, I think it's important. If you said that the purpose of this is to change behaviour, well, really, we're not interested in people that park across two bays particularly, or perhaps stay an extra 15 minutes in a car park when they shouldn't have done. I mean, that's just about extracting funds out of them. The key, if we want to change behaviour, are those people that park in inconsiderate places on the road. And there are many areas around the district where that's happening. And the residents of those areas were very keen to see the control of this parking passed to the districts, because the police hadn't got the time to do anything about it. And they were relying on this move solving their problems. So that's why I think it's important that we get this on-street parking.
Thank you, Councillor Busby. I would take issue partly with what you've said, and I do appreciate and I do understand that the on-street parking is a significant problem, and we do need to make sure that we address the problems that inconsiderate on-street parking cause. But behavioural change is most definitely one of the aspirations, because if people overstay, it means that the churn is reduced, and it is churn that we want to encourage in order to make best use of the spaces that we have available. And that was one of the primary drivers, to be honest, of changing the short-term parking tariffs. It's all about encouraging churn, encouraging more visitors, encouraging better footfall for our businesses. Admittedly, that's not fully appreciated by a number of people in our communities, and they argue against that. But that is one of the principal drivers of changing the short-term tariffs, as it is a driver of having enforcement in our car parks, our street enforcement. Councillor Davison and Councillor McCraw.
Yeah, thanks. I agree with you, Councillor Ward, about the problems within the car parks, and we need to address that. But definitely the on-street parking needs to be looked at as well. And Suffolk County Council really do need to send a report, because some of the practices that it appears that they're not dealing with, for example, charging people that are in disabled bays when there's no clear marking that it's a disabled bay. That's an example. But for us, we need to also, I think, up our game. You mentioned earlier on about the car parking ticketing machines not working correctly, and you just got to look at the amount of appeals. 43% have been successful in appealing against the CPE action, and goodness knows how many others just can't be bothered. So, we need to do our bit as well to help the residents, and that's a comment, not a question.
That's a very good point. Yeah, we must make sure we have fully functioning machines and that people can use those, and also have more than one fully functioning machine in the car park, so they don't have to walk from one end of the car park to the other, sometimes at night time when it's dark. Councillor McCraw and then Councillor Malvisi.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important, as a counterpoint to the conversation and discussion we're having on-street parking, that we do distinguish the difference between on-street and off-street. That has been a constant problem at any discussion of this, and it's quite clear to me that many members of the public don't appreciate that distinction. When they talk about parking, they talk about parking and they mean the parking that annoys them, which is largely on-street. And that distinction, that it is not within our gift to control on-street parking, is not one that's clearly understood, and I think we need to make it clear. Now, we can make all the representations we want to Suffolk County Council, but if they choose not to follow suit, then I don't think there's a great deal we can do. We can apply pressure. And the other point I was going to raise is that the government have been considering possibilities of those people who park on verges and giving powers to various councils. I don't know what level those powers are being considered for, whether it be county or district. They're not the subject, I think, of parking orders, as we've been discussing. But whichever one those are, I think we need to continue to press government. This is not on-road, and it's not off-road. It's on verges, it's on pavements, it's obstructing people in daily lives, and obviously it's also, it's causing problems with deliveries and all sorts of things. So I think we need to distinguish between these three things, on, off, and verge. And there are lots of cases, I'm sure every community has places where the verges are parked on. I think we need to distinguish them, and I think the report needs to make that distinction when it comes back, because I don't think the message is getting through.
Thank you, Councillor. Certainly the on-street parking enforcement is improving. There are more patrols, and a greater part of our district is getting patrolled now for on-street parking, which is good. But Cass, do you have any update on Councillor McCraw's comments about pavement and verge parking, and whether we're likely to get similar powers in the near future, and whether those powers would be within our gift or counties, or how it would be implemented?
So I think the answer is it's probably going to be a bit of both. So at the moment, we haven't heard anything for some time in terms of those powers changing. But where a traffic regulation order is in place, that affects both the road and the verge. So essentially, a traffic regulation order covers from boundary to boundary. So someone's hedge or fence to the next person's hedge or fence. So that's footpath, verge, road, and then footpath, verge the other side as well. So if there were double yellows there, for instance, if someone was parked on the verge, they could get a ticket for parking on double yellows. So if the CPE powers were changed to allow verge parking outside of where there's a traffic regulation order, then that would be the new bit. What I'm hoping, therefore, is that where we own the land, for instance, or perhaps parish or town councils, that we can introduce bylaw where we could still do some kind of enforcement.
Thank you. Yes, okay, yes.
My only concern is that the traffic regulation orders that exist, for the most part, are very, very limited, and they look likely to remain so. Obviously, anywhere there is a patch of grass that is convenient, somebody's going to park on it. Double yellow lines regardless.
Yeah, we'll have to pick that up at some point in the future, but a good point. Councillor Malvisi.
Thank you, Chair. Coming back to Councillor Davis's remark, disabled bays are marked out in our car parks, although not terribly boldly. However, the public can park on a double yellow line if they're disabled and they have a blue badge and their timer disc, which an awful lot of people don't appreciate. The other point made by Councillor McCraw, the distinction is not clearly understood, absolutely. But I think that by having civil parking enforcement actively enforcing will slowly but surely educate people on what they can and cannot do. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mulvey. Councillor Holt.
Yeah, I think CPE is a small step in what our ambition is, which is really to bring the strategic parking review forward. It's crucial to our long-term ambition to find the right balance, I think, for our residents and our businesses and our high streets. Just CPE doesn't solve a problem. The strategic parking review, when completed, in itself won't solve a problem if we just push cars to another area. We have to accept the number of cars we've got in our districts, and they need to park somewhere. Historically, our planning system, I feel, has let us down, and government has let us down in what we're able to achieve through the planning team. The parking is insufficient on most estates, let alone for the residents, but also for visitors. So it's not an easy thing to solve, and CP isn't going to solve that, and nor is just saying off-street parking, let's bring in rules and regulations to stop people parking on verges or parking on pavements, which the government has mentioned, because all it's going to do is push the problem somewhere else, into another street, into another area. What we need to understand and recognise is we have this number of vehicles on the road. They need to park somewhere, and we have to find the facilities for them to park and the areas for them to park. So CP is a small function of that. It's a good step forward, but we've got a lot more to do in solving the problems that we all face in our villages, towns and districts.
Thank you, Councillor Holt. Yeah, fully accept that point. As part of our strategic review of parking, we've got to make sure that we understand where that extra provision for parking is going to be required, and it's not just car parks in town centres, it is residential areas as well where there is insufficient parking. Councillor Mulvey.
Thank you, Chair. To come back to Councillor Holt's very valid comments, CPE is part of the equation, which is why we're looking at sustainable travel alternatives, because we want people to use public transport, cycle into towns and to the centre of villages. It's all part of the recipe for a successful alternative transport model.
Councillor Holt.
I'll just come back on that slightly. A lot of government forecasts, a lot of independent forecasts predict that there'll be a 25% increase in motor vehicles on the road, whether they be electric or whatever, by 2050. So the car isn't going away. The car has to be factored into anything that we look forward to in the future. And I agree with Councillor Mulvey that sustainable transport has to be something we want to encourage and try and provide. But we can't let the fact that the motor vehicle is here for a long time to stay, and we have to allow and build in and accommodate those vehicles when we look at the strategic parking review, as well as encouraging sustainable forms of transport.
Thank you. Okay, I'll now move over to Mid-Suffolk. Any Mid-Suffolk members wish to enter the debate? Nope. Well then, I think then I'll ask the Governance Officer to conduct the electronic vote, please.
Yes, Chair. I have actually had the additional amended recommendations added, if you would just like to cast your eyes over to make sure you agree. I
think that's fine, yeah.
Okay.
Happy with that.
members, your vote is now in progress, and it's a simultaneous vote, so you should be able to vote at the same time. Chair, that is 8 votes for Babergh recommendations, so that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Sorry, we had some technical problems. The Mid-Suffolk vote will now be started. Sorry. Do apologise. Chair, and that is 6 votes for, and that is also unanimous.
Thanks, Henriette. Right, we'll have a very short break to allow officers to be seated for the next item. Although, Tom, is anyone else? Is it just you? So we don't really need a break then, do we? No. Okay. We'll proceed then. Okay, item 9, paper BCA 2124 and MCA 2122. Community Infrastructure Levy SIL Expenditure Programme for October 2021. And I'll now invite the Babergh Cabinet Member for Planning to introduce the Babergh report. Councillor Arthey.
Thank you, Chairman. You will all be familiar now with these reports. This time we have only one award, which is below £10,000, so is for noting only. It is for Lavenham Prentice Street Car Park, and the EV power supply. It's £9,999.99p, which is around half of the cost, with Lavenham Parish Council funding the rest. This is all detailed at paragraph 4.1. I'm proposing the recommendations at paragraph 3, which include endorsement of the appendices, with Appendix A providing the updated position detailing all of our SIL awards. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. May I have a seconder from Babergh, please? Councillor Busby. I'll now invite the Mid-Suffolk Cabinet Member for Planning to introduce the Mid-Suffolk report. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to introduce paper MCA/21/22, which is the report on the SIL Expenditure Programme for October 2021. This report seeks to obtain approval by Cabinet for Mid-Suffolk's SIL Expenditure Programme, October 2021, which forms Appendix A to this report. In short, there are 4 bids for you today. All of the details of these bids are contained within your papers, but I will briefly run through them before moving the recommendation. Bid M21-02 seeks £20,148 for the provision of a wheeled sports area in Rickinghall. Bid M21-05 seeks £59,994 towards significant improvements to Debenham Community Centre. Bid M21-08 seeks £18,789.20 towards new play equipment in Framsden, and bid M21-06 seeks £19,593.81 towards improvements of the Chamberlain Hall in Elmswell. The first three of those bids are to be taken from the Local Infrastructure Fund, with the last one being proposed to be taken from the Ring-Fenced Infrastructure Fund for Elmswell. I therefore move recommendations 3.1 and 3.2 in your report, and I ask for a seconder. I'm happy to take any questions you have, but it's likely that I'll field them over to Tom Barker, who's here to support any of the more technical queries that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. May I have a seconder from Mid Suffolk? Councillor Richardson. Thank you. Okay, firstly, Babergh members, are there any questions on the Babergh report? Okay. Mid Suffolk members, do you have any questions on the Mid Suffolk report? And other councillors? Councillor Field, you have your hand up.
Yes, just really a brief point on it. The I note, as always, that bids are not considered valid until they have planning permission. I was just wondering whether there was a view on whether that's discouraging local bodies from bidding. Obviously, it's a considerable expenditure to make before the point at which you know you will be able to obtain funding for whatever you're proposing.
Tom, you able to pick that up, please?
Thank you, Councillor Field. Yes, it is a matter that I understand has been considered by the SIL member working group, and it is a requirement for all funding applications to know that what they are, whether SIL or to elsewhere, it's kind of inherent part of seeking funding that funders have confidence that you can deliver that which you are seeking funding for. And I think it's always been important to the member working group that where SIL money is allocated, that it doesn't sit allocated and unspent for a number of years while kind of aspirational projects may be worked up further or such like. So I guess it's possible that it's restraining or constraining to people, but clearly the council can work with those bodies, and councillors' very effective communities team who can work with local organisations and through our external funding officer or through other funding officers can work with them, and the council also, as the planning authority, provides pre-application advice, for example, at a reduced rate to parish councils in order to kind of facilitate those kind of conversations, and we'll always have kind of helpful and supportive conversations about what is required to make a planning application, and for often SIL items, you need to do the work anyway. So if you're improving your village hall and you're improving it in a particular way, you need to do the work to understand what the costs of that are. Is it something that you can fund from your own purse, or do you need to go out? Is SIL something that can wholly fund it, or do you need to go to other external funders? So we haven't had feedback, and we have heard from a number of parts of our community who have spoken about SIL at Scrutiny over the years since we adopted it, and we haven't had feedback that it is off-putting to people, but it is something that we can raise again within the member working group to see whether it needs revisiting, but as yet don't have any, unless you're bringing news that it is constraining some of your local parishes or community organisations, and we can feed that in. We don't have any feedback that it's proving negative for people.
Thank you for that. Just a comment, I don't have any specific examples, but clearly there is an issue of raising planning permission, getting quotations for work, all the things that, as you say, are absolutely necessary to get a valid project moving, but when taken in combination, they're probably trivial for a bunch of Mid-Suffolk officers, but fairly demanding for people out in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wellham.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question about the number of inquiries that seem to be going nowhere or may well go nowhere. There's quite a few in from Town Council. I just wondered whether other town councils, parish councils and the like are submitting significant numbers of inquiries, and they seem to be listed here when they're unlikely to go anywhere, unlikely to be a successful bid. I just wonder how that happens, and is it peculiar to or are other Stowmarket Town Council, for instance, are they submitting bids that are going nowhere? Just getting a feel for the percentage of bids that seem to be coming in or inquired about that are going nowhere.
Councillor Byrne or Tom? Tom?
I'm happy to pick that up. I think one thing it shows you is where you have proactive town and parish councils who are exploring what they can do to improve the facilities available to their communities. There is quite a mixed picture across the area where some ward members might be more proactive in encouraging their town and parish councils to kind of come forward with inquiries. Some town and parish councils may seek to kind of hold back until they're certain that something's going to go ahead. Others like to kind of have exploratory conversations quite early on. So there's quite a mixed picture, and I'm struggling at the moment to give you a kind of consistent, yes, there are these 7 parishes that are constantly making inquiries, and there are these 57 that never get in touch with us. But I can go away and look at it for you if you'd like to explore it a bit further. But I think my instinct is that it reflects the different ways of working of different parish clerks and parish and town councils.
Thank you, Tom. That's certainly a similar experience in Babergh with different approaches in different parishes, and how proactive the clerks and the chairman are. So, Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually reinforcing what my 2 colleague councillors have raised, which is what doesn't get through, or initially they don't even consider applying for SIL. I think that's one of my concerns. And so we're back to, I'm asking the question about enabling and empowering parish councils and parish clerks to get involved in this process. I think there is some need, not just about SIL, I've got to say. I think there are a lot of issues around how efficient parishes are and how motivated they are. So I don't know whether there's something we can do as a council to some training or something.
Tom, are you able to provide any?
Tom is looking in my direction,
okay.
I think. So,
it's the Councillor Arthur.
I sit on the working group. I think there are some fairly good points that have been made there. We now offer a SIL inquiry service, which we used not to do, and we specifically introduced that to eliminate the likelihood, or reduce the likelihood rather, of lots of work being done by groups on projects that were going to end up being ineligible. So I think that's helped quite a lot, so that people can actually come to us first and say to the SIL team, this is what we're thinking about, how can we fund it? And we help with other sources of funding as well, because a lot of the community projects are restricted, if they're larger projects, to the 75% or 75,000. So we help with other funding, including our own community grants programme. A lot of groups, some parish councils, and I have to say some district councillors, don't fully understand the process. We have done some engagement events to offer training, and I think yours is a very, very good point. The rules with regards to SIL do change. We've updated our framework, and of course we've got a new charging regime which we've proposed. So I absolutely accept that as we move forward, the need to get out there to communities, particularly parish councils, but not only parish councils, because a lot of these bids don't actually come from parish councils, they come from community groups like village hall committees and others. So as we move forward, there is a constant need to go out there, update and train so that people are aware of what's available, what they can and can't bid for. And the point with regard to planning permissions that was made earlier on, I think it's quite important to remember that we should only be funding schemes that are ready to go. We expect delivery of that infrastructure. So we want a scheme that comes to us that's got full consent, it's fully funded, because we may not be funding the whole lot, so we want to know what all of the other funding sources are to make sure that the scheme can actually be delivered. So that's quite important as well. But I absolutely accept the bit about training. We need to get out there and engage constantly.
Thank you for that response, Councillor Arthey. Tom, did you want to say anything further?
Yeah, just to supplement the response from Councillor Arthey, was to if parishes or community groups are focusing on should I apply for SIL, they're asking themselves the wrong question. So the key question, and Councillor Davis I see is perked up there. So for all of our communities, they should be asking, what is it that we want to do within our community that can make it a better place for our residents? And once they ask that question, then they can get in contact with us as the council, and you've got a kind of enlivened communities team over recent months who are continually growing their capacity. So they should be getting in touch either through you as ward councillor or directly with officers to explore the range of different funding opportunities that are available to them, of which SIL might be one. So we've got grants officers, we've got funding officers, and across the council we've got proactive people who can help them, whether it's for environmental improvements, and they could speak to one of Cass's team or across the council, and your communities officers would be able to facilitate those conversations into other parts of the organisation. So the key thing for ward councillors, I think, is to encourage that aspiration and then hand through to officers who can advise whether SIL is the most appropriate route or whether actually there are better or more relevant funding mechanisms available to them.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, we're now moving into debate. Babergh members, do any of you wish to make any further comments? Councillor Holt.
It sort of follows on from what the discussion just previously held, but I think the engagement of members is crucial in this, and we've discussed it before, I think, in Cabinet, about how we feel that members across the district aren't pushing and promoting SIL in the way that we'd hoped. I just wonder whether a report could be done, Tom, where it shows ward by ward what SIL expenditure has been spent within those wards against the income, and what sort of projects have been actually carried out historically, because I'm not sure all members, as has been alluded to, really understand what SIL can be used for, and to show illustrations of what has been done. And also, following on from that, wards that perhaps don't think they have a lot of income from SIL don't really understand they can dip into the bigger pocket as well. So I think there's a lot more work that we can do as a cabinet, a lot more work we can do as an authority to promote SIL within our district and get our members to engage in the process.
Thank you, Councillor Holt. Councillor Arthey, did you want to?
Well, only just to say that every time we present one of these reports, we include Appendix A, which gives you a full history of all of the SIL awards.
With all due respect, I think we've got to do more and promote it, and I think we should be sending out direct emails to our members promoting SIL, pushing SIL, and trying to get our parishes to engage. I'm aware of projects in my wards where they haven't approached for SIL money, and I'm sure they could have qualified, and you push them as a member. But I think Tom mentioned parish clerks as well. There's a lot more work we could do, a lot more work, and I think we need to do it as an organisation.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think we do need to have another communications push with all members and with all parish clerks, so that equally they can make the efforts from both sides. So if the parish clerk is not as forthcoming, perhaps or proactive in coming forward with SIL applications, and members can push, and vice versa. If members are not pushing it as much as they ought to, then the parish clerks can then get on to the members. So it needs to we need to have that communication of both sides and get them together. Councillor Malvisi.
Both you and Councillor Holt make very good points, but if Tom can correct me, there was a time when you did pull together parish clerks and ward members, and there was, I mean, I went to Bilderston for one meeting, and then there was another one somewhere, I think Pinewood. So we were doing something. I think it's just sort of fallen off the radar at the moment.
Yeah, Tom.
If it would be helpful, yes. Since the introduction of SIL in 2016, there have been a number of community liaison events whereby the council officers have, both through the general parish and town council liaison meetings, where SIL officers have been, I think, 4 times to those, but there have also been separate bespoke meetings put on for members of the community. There have also been some funding events that the council has put on through its communities team, whereby SIL has been one of the mechanisms available alongside our community grants, alongside the skills and expertise of our external funding officer. So there have been, there hasn't been anything over the last 18 months in terms of face-to-face and those kind of things, clearly for obvious reasons. So I think it probably would be timely to perhaps reorganise. I know that there are conversations about organising town and parish liaison meetings, but it might well be that I have a conversation with our new Assistant Director for Communities and Wellbeing, who's here today. I have a conversation with him about whether there's something that the Communities team may wish to put on as a kind of reinvigoration of the opportunities that are out there to build aspiration and confidence that people should take forward the projects and not do that kind of self-censoring, self-limiting thing of thinking, well, we're only a little old village, there won't be money out there available for us, therefore we'll dampen down our own enthusiasm for XYZ project.
Thank you, Tom. Mid-Suffolk members, do you have anything you wish to contribute to the debate at this stage? Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a comment based on something that Tom Barker just said, which I absolutely agree with, in terms of the interlink between SIL and communities and wellbeing. And just given what is in the Mid-Suffolk report, I thought it was kind of worth making this kind of point, that given the strategies that we now have in place, whether that's the leisure, physical activity and sport strategy or the wellbeing strategies, actually SIL money can be a key enabler for some of the things that are in there. So within Mid-Suffolk we have the wheeled sports facility in Ricking Hall and the upgrades to Debenham Community Centre that can help, that will enable it to be used as a sort of a multi-purpose venue. So I think there's a really important interlink into what we can deliver within planning and some of the other areas of the council, and I think that's a really important point that I just want to emphasise. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a comment on the parish council liaison meetings that we hold. We have traditionally, of course, had face-to-face meetings for those, and in my experience, the attendance has been limited because of the difficulties that a lot of parish councils experience in getting to daytime meetings. It just occurs to me that with the experience of the last 18 months carrying out virtual meetings, we are likely to reach many more councillors if we were to approach our liaison with them for this particular issue we're talking about today. If we were to approach that on a virtual basis rather than a face-to-face meeting anyway, so I would just suggest that was something worth exploring rather than sticking to our SIL training as being restricted to face-to-face liaison meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments from anyone? In which case then I'll ask the Governance Officer to conduct the electronic vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now in progress on your app. Chair, that is eight votes for Babergh recommendations and 6 votes for Mid-Suffolk recommendations, so they're both unanimous.
Thank you, Henriette. Right, the next item is for Mid-Suffolk members only, and so Councillor Brewster will therefore take the chair for this item, and there'll now be a short break to allow for officers to be seated and for Babergh members to depart.
The item is MCA/21/23, Gateway 14 Limited, guarantee of public infrastructure works until adoption. I will now invite the Mid-Suffolk Cabinet Member for Assets and Investments to introduce the report. Councillor Gould, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'm pleased to present this report to the Cabinet, which takes Gateway 14 Limited into the delivery phase of the development, with the creation of the business park framework and infrastructure, including necessary off-site public works to improve highways and utilities. The report recommends that the Council acts as guarantor for public works being delivered by Gateway 14 under agreements with statutory bodies. This is the most efficient approach, which mitigates the Council's borrowing requirements whilst providing the necessary security to ensure that the off-site works and improvements are completed. You will see from the report that this proposal sits within the Council's powers and meets the test of reasonableness. Gateway 14 is a huge opportunity for our district and is set to deliver thousands of jobs and grow the economy of Mid-Suffolk by delivering approximately 2.4 million square feet of sustainable business accommodation in a high-quality business park environment, which also enhances biodiversity. I'm genuinely excited to see work start on site in the near future and for this business park to take shape and deliver for our district. Thank you very much, Chair.
A proposer and a seconder?
Well, I clearly propose the recommendation.
Thank you, sorry, that's right. And a seconder, please. Councillor Haddingham, thank you. Fine. Questions from any members present in the Cabinet? No? We'll go to other members then. Councillor Keith Scarf. Sorry, Councillor Keith Wellham. He's not here.
Thank you, Chairman. This matter is obviously a decision for Cabinet. However, could I ask that local members are kept better informed of discussions and decisions around Gateway 14? You will recall many months ago I was told by the leader that there would be meetings which would involve local councillors and ward members and the like. No such meeting has yet been arranged, despite me chasing the leader for dates for a meeting. So it's unfortunate we're not better informed. Because there are meetings going ahead. Representatives of Stowmarket Eco Futures Group and the Creting Residents Association have had a meeting with representatives of Gateway 14. And I have a meeting this evening to be briefed by them about what's going on. Now, that's the wrong way. I should not be asking Stowmarket Eco Futures Group and Creting Residents Association to let me know what's going on at Mid-Suffolk. So can we please have much better, much more information to local members, please?
Thank you, Councillor Wellham. What I will certainly do is revisit the leader's commitment on this to remind myself what that is, and I'll certainly talk to her about what was promised and what we ought to be delivering in terms of local member consultation. I don't know whether the Assistant Director has anything to add in terms of briefing arrangements beyond that.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm always happy to talk to all councillors around projects that we're delivering, and I know we have a meeting later this week to talk about Gateway 14 further. But equally happy to meet with you after this meeting and help brief you for the Parish Council this evening, if that would be helpful.
Councillor Willam.
Thank you. Chair, it seems that members need to know what questions they need to ask before they can ask them, but we don't know what those questions are because we don't actually know what's going on. We need to be briefed and have an opportunity for discussion, not wait until we've heard that something has already taken place. If I may respond to Councillor Gould, I know the commitment that the leader made, but even if she had not made that commitment, I still think that parish councils, one of the councils that I represent, their boundary is about 50 yards, 48 metres away from the site, and they've had no information whatsoever.
So if my previous answers sounded overly cautious, I'd absolutely take your point about councillors understanding what is a project of such enormous advantage and benefit to Mid-Suffolk that local councillors ought to have an understanding, if not an opportunity to contribute to the development of that opportunity. So certainly I'll talk with the Assistant Director about what briefing arrangements we might make in order to improve the flow. So apologies, my initial answer sounded somewhat defensive because there's absolutely no need to be so.
Thank you.
Councillor Field.
Thank you. I think on the bulk of the paper it is clear that this is a sensible way ahead. So questions really revolve around the thought of clearly it's good to be getting on with things like the highways work to enable development. The risk is how certain is the development, how interested are people to move ahead. And I sort of always contrast this with Port 1 at Great Bakerham, which I know somewhat better, where buildings are going up, but the highways work hasn't been done. You know, there are temporary entrances in place, and very large sheds are appearing. And where I certainly, some years ago, was told more or less the list of people who were waiting to move into the buildings once they were up. I don't get the same feeling at Gateway 14. Sorry? Yes, there is a question. Sorry about that, but you have to understand where I'm coming from to an extent. The point really is, basically, I don't expect you to quote names and things, but is there strong interest? Are you taking this decision on the basis that there are people waiting to occupy the buildings we're trying to build, so the thing clearly has a future and is clearly moving ahead, or are we still peddling a big green field that we hope people will be interested in?
Thanks. I think there's every reason for confidence to be growing rather than diminishing in terms of this. And there are obviously, you yourself referred to the constraints of discussing these things within open session or even outside the rules of commercial confidentiality. But I don't know, I'll see if we can ask the Assistant Director if there's some comfort that she can bring in terms of the response that is being got, the interest that's been expressed in the site.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, we do have a list of interested parties for the site. We've particularly seen interest in the site increase since the Freeport announcement. So we're very confident that there will be strong demand for this site and continued strong demand. And as soon as we start the commencement of the development works on site, we see that this interest will increase further. So we are confident that there's interest in the site and there's demand. There are a number of companies that we're in quite detailed discussions with, but one of the key aspects that these companies are keen to determine is the timeline. So the detailed work that we're doing now in terms of the infrastructure works and timetable for delivery of those works will help us in terms of the discussions we're having with occupiers, because they want to know when they would be able to occupy their building, and that feeds into the delivery of the road and the utilities, etc. on site. But yes, we are confident that there is strong interest out there, and this scheme will be very successful moving forward.
Thank you.
Are you satisfied there, Councillor Field?
As much as one can ever be satisfied not being able to foretell the future. Yeah.
Thank you. Just remind you, if we do need to go into closed session, we'll be going into debate. Please don't pick that up. We'll go into closed session if you wish to at the later stage. So I will now open the item up for debate. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to make a very brief comment because in effect, all I'm going to say is that I completely agree with everything that Councillor Gould said in his introduction around the importance of this work and about moving into the delivery phase so that we do this in a timely manner. I just wanted to reiterate that because I think it's exceptionally important. So I shall definitely be voting in favour of the recommendation. And again, I think that does seem to be the most reasonable and logical way forward. So I think that's absolutely what we should be doing. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Byrne.
It's not so much part of the debate, it's a question really I should have asked as a sort of supplementary to Councillor Field's question. And my question would be, I think, to the Assistant Director, is does she have a sense that there is more interest being shown than we have capacity to accommodate? That would be reassuring.
So I think that's quite a difficult question to answer, but I think when we looked at the development delivery lifetime of this development originally last February, when we appointed the development managers to the scheme, we were anticipating a 10-year delivery period. Since the Freeport designation has been announced, we're starting to consider whether actually that may be more of a sort of 5-year period. So I think indirectly that probably does answer your question to a degree, in that if we think we can deliver the scheme in a much shorter period, that suggests that there's more interest than we had originally anticipated, and that potentially there will be parties who more parties who are interested in taking space there than we can ultimately deliver. Having said that, it is 150 odd acres, and therefore in this initial period I don't think there will be any issues about not being able to accommodate people on site, but certainly there is a strong degree of interest, and as we get nearer to the end of that delivery period, I suspect there may be some occupiers who we're not able to accommodate on site, and we'll need to look at where else within the district we can accommodate those uses.
Anyone else wish to speak? No? Okay. I mean, to me, the recommendation sounds a very common sense way of approaching this item, really. So I will now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now in progress on your app. Chair, that is 6 votes for, and that's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Having done that item, is there any wish to go into the closed session? Sorry.
It's too late now.
that item will be deleted off the agenda. Thank you very much. So, the date and the time of the next meeting is Monday, the 4th of November at 10:30 a.m. And so we reach the close of the meeting, and I thank you all very much for your attendance and call the meeting to a close. Thank you.